Hi guys. Is everyone there? This is my first time adding in someone else onto a live, so I'm waiting to see if he joins. Thank you guys for tuning into this, by the way. I think this is going to be really special. Let's see. Come on, Dr. K. Hi. I see all of you. Hold on. So I'm supposed to, can you guys comment and help me here? I'm supposed to wait until I see a request, right? Thanks, my bangs are awesome. I cut them myself. Oh, I see you. Okay, so go live. Dr. K.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
Long time, or
I
too long, I should say. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking a second to jump on. I know you have so much happening in your world, so I'm grateful, and I think based on the post that I did earlier and all the comments that came in, I think a lot of people will really benefit from this. So thank you. And
Sure.
I would love if you would kind of give yourself your own intro, because no one can speak about you in the way that you can. But I just want to set this up by saying that without diving too much into the detail of it, because as you know, we keep so much of our life very private. You have changed our life, our whole family, and the work you're doing is so, so profound to me that I couldn't help myself. I had to ask you to join in and share some of what you know and what you've taught us. And, you know, growing up in a family where I don't know if I've told you this, but my grandfather was a surgeon, and a really well-respected surgeon at a really well-respected hospital. And so I kind of was introduced to like a lot of Eastern and a lot of Western medicine at the same time. And he definitely instilled this like dig a little bit deeper mentality in me. You know, like I don't ever just take one person's opinion or perspective as the end all be all. You know, I'm constantly digging and searching. And part of why I connected with you so much is because your approach to medicine, hi, my cat is joining our live. Your approach to medicine is very much that, you know, you don't just have one angle or one thought on something. You're kind of like banging down every door. And when we've hit roadblocks together as a family and with you, you've continued to kind of push every boundary and help us in ways that I will one day share, I promise. But right now, just to sort of protect my little one's privacy, I don't talk too much about it right now. But
Nor should you.
anyway, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. So for all of you, and one,
Yeah.
grateful to have this opportunity to share with you and your audience, because you know at the end of the day, I think we all feel the more information we can get out there, the more we can empower people, right? To have more information than what they're currently given. Hopefully we can really tip the tide of this, you know, awful thing that's happening in society, and have less people end up in the hospital. And you know, all of the things that I've done so far has really been of that mindset, because we all have people who are getting harmed by this illness. And if we can do even a tiny bit to change that, I think that would mean the world to me, and you know, I'm sure to all the poor people out there who are suffering.
Yeah.
So I guess to just start, my name is Dr. K. I'm a pediatrician that, God, finished residency about 15 years ago, thereabouts. And, you know, what I realized when I was in my training was that conventional medicine is fantastic. It has so many great things. And in certain catastrophe, it's incredible. And there's nothing bad about it. But when anyone says that one model is the end all, they're just
Yeah.
themselves in their capacity to understand the human body. And one thing I learned over time, so I've done training in multiple different fields, and what I realized every time was like, well, this field has so many great things, but my gosh, they don't understand all the picture. And you know, over time, I just went from one group to another, and I just wanted to accumulate more information, more knowledge. And as I kept training, my eyes and my perspective kept opening up. And really, at the end of the day, why I was driven to do this is, one, to understand my own health, And most importantly, I kept seeing little people in the clinic that would have these weird issues that there were no seemingly answers to. And I was like, well, someone has to have the answers. You know, if you don't have the answers, and if what you're teaching me, whichever group I was working with, well, you know, if the gut protocol doesn't work, there has to be another answer out there. And that has kept driving me to, you know, learn more and to understand more. And, you know, some of my greatest teachers have been these people that no one knows about just because they don't have a big following, but they have taught me profound things about the body. And it has been just trying to accumulate as much information as I can from whomever and testing it out and really seeing what works and not. And that's kind of how my approach has come about.
So on that note, you write these brilliant 10 to 15 page essays, journal entries, letters to a lot of the families that you work with, our family included. And I take the time to read them every week, and not just read them. I print them, and that says a lot actually, because we are very paper conscious in this household. So for me to actually print something, it means it's going to live for a very long time. And I print it and I pass it around, and I give it to family members, and I highlight. And a lot of what you talk about in your weekly letters is different forms of supplements and this kind of like preventative approach to medicine, which I love. You know, you wrote something in the last paper, which, by the way, I should really stop opening them when I wake up in the morning, because the first like hour and a half of my morning, I'm just sitting here, but like I'm not productive. What you spoke about is that we spend a lot of time talking about what to do when you're already in the ICU, instead of talking about ways to really nourish our bodies before we end up in such a critical state. And I don't want to speak like I'm an expert on any of this. I'm here to literally just be a channel or vessel for you and what you speak about. But I wrote down a couple of things, and I have some notes that I want to talk to you about, because your list and your regimen, your supplements, and the oils that you've recommended have done really profound things in our household. And I'm just going to share quickly, and I'll probably get slammed for this, but I went through 2 rounds of antibiotics in the last 3 months for this crazy, weird, like sinus bacterial infection in my nose that nobody could figure out. My ENT couldn't figure it out. No one could figure it out. And I don't take a lot of antibiotics. So generally when I do, I have a very quick response to them. So for me to take a full round of penicillin and a full round, 2-week round of Ceftonir and not have any results was pretty shocking. And so my doctor was like, I don't know, do we do a 3rd round of antibiotics? Which really freaks me out. And I took 4 days of your immune boost oil mix that I should probably run down and grab so I can show everybody. And I don't know what you put in that or what kind of magic potion that is, but my sinus pressure and my sinus infection has gone down by like 70%. I don't know, 60%, 80%, whatever it is. I feel like a completely different person. And so that was also kind of what was like the tipping point for me. Just bringing in, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, because holistic medicine is something that, you know, that's a term that's thrown around, or anyway, I'll let you speak on that, but you definitely have a way of kind of getting in there in ways that like conventional medicine hasn't done for me.
Well, you know, I think first of all, I'm so happy that you're better and you benefited from this. And, you know, all the tools we have at the clinic are really just to help our families. That's my, you know, end game. It's not to make a bunch of money off of them. Most of the stuff we sell just barely above cost, because for me, that these things should not be money makers. The families, yours included, are already supporting our clinic. And for me, it's like, let me find ways to help our families. And this was just one of the tools. And at the end of the day, everything is a tool, right? You know, the problem is conventional medicine says antibiotics and pharmaceuticals are the only tools we should use, and everything else is totally useless. Whereas when you step out, you're like, how is that even logical? You know, how is it logical to say that pharmaceuticals and antibiotics are the only tools that work and nothing else works? Whereas if you just go back in history, essential oils have been in use for thousands of years. Yeah. And in today's time, if you actually take the time to sit and look at the literature, it's like mind-blowing. The properties that certain oils have, like you've seen me harp on thyme. You know, thyme essential oil is crazy because it's an antimicrobial. It has some antiviral properties. It seems to have been effective against the past SARS virus. which was a nasty virus and similar to our current coronavirus. So it's just this conversation of why limit yourself to one modality. And going back to what you touched on at the start of this, you know, in conventional medicine, we say, well, these are our only tools. And right now, what has happened is all of our tools, for the most part, are failing.
Yeah.
So the reason why we've come about to this mindset of everyone shelter in place, don't go out, which I think is totally appropriate. So this isn't a conversation like, hey, all of you go be irresponsible and go expose yourself and others. Not at all. And you've seen me say that in every single one.
There's a visitor.
Hello. But
what's up, Dr. K?
How are you?
Amazing, man. I'm sorry I'm so late to getting on this. We're so grateful that you took the time to do this.
My pleasure. It's an
Keep
honor.
going. Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
But, you know, what we were just talking about is why is there no discussion of prevention in this country?
Yeah.
And our only preventative tool right now is everyone shelter in place and everyone just avoid contact, which I think is absolutely appropriate. And given what's at stake, we should all be doing that. But why is that the only thing? And it really boils down to we're in a system where antibiotics, pharmaceuticals, steroids are our only tools, and we've been hit by this, you know, awful illness, and all of a sudden it's like, shoot, we have no tools, we have nothing to do, so we just need to keep people out of the hospital, because from catching the illness to the ICU, there's basically nothing that can be done. And when people are in the ICU, then we mount these massive heroics, which are amazing, but why not open up conversation and say,
do you think it's fear? Do you think that people don't want to try an unconventional approach because there's some sort of liability, or what do you think it is?
I think it's really lack of awareness, because, you know, when you look at certain things, like, it's funny, on one hand we'll say that, well, essential oils are useless, they do nothing.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, it's like, well, they could be harmful. Well, which is it? Do they not work, or are they harmful? Or
right.
This is coming from people who have zero training to actually understand what these things do. Right. You know, that's like me commenting on, you know, the outcome of a surgery, a complex surgery, a heart surgery, and shooting from the hip of like, well, this is what could be done, where I have no qualification to do that.
Right.
And when you look at it from the other way, from even basic diet, you know, like, why in God's good earth are we not talking about diet?
Yeah, that's my next question for you. So you spoke a little bit about the gut health connection in your last paper 2 days ago, but if we can talk a little bit about that, and then also about your thoughts on nutrition playing a huge role in this, and not just gut health and absorption, but nutrition playing a part in our immune function,
especially in the anti-inflammatory space.
Yeah. If we step out and we just look at the science that's out there, there's so much information that tells us that nutrition and food can balance the immune system. Again, this isn't to say that if you eat well, you should go be reckless, right. But it could say that we actually, if we start really looking at this and saying, you know what, there's no harm in telling people to start eating more onions, garlic, broccoli, you know, and these foods alone, just the ones that I mentioned, along with other cruciferous vegetables, actually boost glutathione levels. They boost your antioxidant levels. And
talk about glutathione for a second, because I think that's a word that, yeah.
So glutathione is basically the master fire extinguisher in the system. It's the most important antioxidant that our body has. And when you eat enough foods that have sulfur, like onions, garlic, broccoli, various other things, what they do is those foods actually give the building blocks to make more glutathione in the body. And when you have enough glutathione, you basically have a very strong fire extinguishing system in your body to put out fires. And the way to look at what happens to these really, really poor people that end up in the ICU and, heavens forbid, pass away is basically there's so much fire inside their body. The cytokine storm, I'm sure you've heard that term. The cytokine storm is basically a forest fire that has gone completely out of control and is just burning at an astronomically high rate that ultimately causes these people's lungs to fill with fluid. And when they get to that stage, it becomes so difficult to reverse it that some people pass away. what we don't talk about is what happens that leads some people to get into that horrible, horrible place. And then 80% of the population that get this virus actually, they get a little cough. Some people get no cough and they process it and are fine. What I found was, at least in other illnesses, so this ARDS, which is ultimately what causes the lungs to fill with fluid and for the people to pass, in other illnesses, there's a similar process that unfolds. And in a lot of those disease states, what they found is the lungs were lacking glutathione. So,
Really?
Wow.
yeah. So they were lacking the fire extinguishing system. Now, that's not to say that if you have enough glutathione in your lungs, everything's going to be perfect.
Sure, it's a compilation of things,
Wait.
obviously,
Yeah.
but it's something to be aware of for sure. And if you're able to use that kind of supplement, then it's something to consider, I guess, if you have access to that.
Or eat those foods.
Or eat those foods. Do you have any particular, before we move on from glutathione, do you have any particular brands or places that you recommend for people to research different kinds of glutathione?
So I think if you can get your hands on a liposomal glutathione.
Are you guys writing this down, by the way? Get pen and paper. I have. I'm taking notes. I take a lot of notes from you. Okay, liposomal glutathione.
Glutathione, and for your audience, whoever is interested, we have all of this information on the blog. So I've actually posted the blogs on our website, holistickids.com. So if they go to your blogs and resources, all of this is there. But
can you repeat the name?
Sure. It's basically our clinic name, which I think is posted over here. So WHOLISTIC Kids. So holistickids.com.
And I'll post about that again after this, just to
make sure the name is there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But liposomal glutathione is generally what people want to get. And Amazon has it. There's a website called Pure Formulas. I know that they have hundreds of bottles right now of that.
I order from them, yeah.
There's a lot of websites, and ultimately people should go to wherever they're comfortable with. But if you do a search for liposomal glutathione, Quicksilver makes a great one. Pure Encapsulations has several different formulations. There's a company called Thorne, Designs Health. They're all great brands. And, at the end of the day, if each family unit, I don't think everyone needs to go buy their own, because hopefully vast majority of people, if they were to even catch this, will probably be fine. But if each group of friends went and bought one bottle and had it ready, so heavens forbid someone is suddenly in a nasty, coughing spell, they're having shortness of breath, they've got the bottle and they're like, here you go, start blasting this into the system. I think we can honestly do some good to change this. Because, I think I shared with you the story of what happened to my own family. What got me to wake up and say, like, oh my God, we really need to step into this as a community, is outside of all of these awful cases in New York and in LA and in all of these places, my own family member, my first cousin, actually got this illness. And, she was 5 days into it, and I get a call and she's coughing so bad, literally she couldn't breathe. And she's like, I can't catch my breath. I feel like I'm suffocating. I got 2 young kids. Oh my God, am I gonna pass away? Who's like, this is literally what she's telling me. I'm like, calm down. Literally, like, I actually, my parents had some, so we literally got that, and her sister went and got some things, and literally an hour after she called me, we just threw all of this stuff at her door. And I was on, like, talking to her 4 times a day, and then, like, within 36 hours, she could actually start breathing. Wow. She's still coughing now. It's not like she's completely recovered, but within 48, 72 hours, the extreme shortness of breath, the difficulty breathing gone. And this poor person was literally on her way to the ICU. And then she went to the urgent care before talking to me, and they had prescribed her this intense antibiotic and high doses of steroids, which for her could have actually been what would have tipped her over the edge and probably ended her up in the hospital.
Can you talk about steroid use for 1 second, just because I've read a lot of controversial stuff about steroid use?
So steroids
and NSAIDs and all of that, if you want to maybe tackle that whole thing for a second.
Sure. So especially with the steroids, right now what's happening is urgent cares are prescribing steroids like it's water. Like, they're prescribing it like it's going out of style. And the CDC has come out and said steroids don't actually work for this illness. And what steroids can do is actually suppress the immune system's ability to fight this virus, which may actually increase the viral loads, which could actually make the illness worse. Now, that is not to say steroids shouldn't be used, because it turns out if you end up in the hospital or the ICU and you're falling apart, when they do their mega doses of steroids in that kind of a setting, it's actually helpful. But we shouldn't be taking steroids without really thinking through what it does to the body. And unfortunately, in the urgent cares where a doctor has 5 minutes, they're looking at you saying, oh, you got these symptoms, here you go. You know, they don't know your past medical history. They're not thinking about all of the issues.
They're doing the best they can and what they've been trained to do. So it's not a criticism of that.
Yeah.
They're just,
not at all.
They're just throwing any solution at a wall because they're overflowing, right?
Well, they also don't have the luxury of
time.
Looking at blood and viral loads and all those tests.
Exactly. And that's why, honestly, I keep saying to all of our families, tell everyone to go have a conversation with their doctor. Their doctor knows them best. And what we're not doing right now is people are not calling their doctor and saying, hey, I may get this coronavirus. This is what may happen to me. In this scenario, what do you think I should do?
I wasn't looking at the comments below because I'm so focused on your face, but I just saw one pop up below that said, can you give this to a child with asthma? Glutathione, I'm assuming they're talking about glutathione.
Absolutely. Glutathione is literally one of the safest supplements you could use.
Okay.
There are essentially no known contraindications to it. The only thing that theoretically can happen is someone who has high blood pressure or someone who has high blood sugar may actually see their blood pressure or blood sugar come down. Theoretically, it's very rare, but the only bad issue is someone's blood pressure or blood sugar can come down, which at the end of the day could be helpful. But anyone can use it, and it can definitely help. My suggestion is, considering that it's kind of expensive and hard to come by, that people really use this right at the onset of the illness, right at the onset of, okay, I am starting to cough. Oh, this cough is getting a little bad. And start using it in that scenario to really protect your system, protect your airways, bring down the inflammation, and balance that intense immune response, which is part of why things go out of control.
And I have a list from you that we've been that's like our cabinet list. So vitamin A was one, vitamin D, higher doses of vitamin D than I think I've ever taken in my life, glutathione, vitamin C, zinc was a big one. And then a lot of your oils. Do you have like a ready to go pack that you can sort of talk about in broad strokes of what you would recommend?
Yeah, I think so it was my colleague, Dr. Elroy Vojdani, who's in my eyes probably the smartest, holistic immunologist that I know. This guy understands the gut better than any human being I've ever come across. And he was the one that pointed out that a little bit of vitamin A can actually increase the integrity of the lining of the lungs and the gut. So it protects the lining from insult. Vitamin D does the same. It also balances part of that renin-angiotensin. So with the pathway that ultimately the virus gets into the cells. So I think a little vitamin A, a little bit of vitamin D, or it's, in the eyes of some people, a lot of vitamin D. Zinc is helpful because if you're deficient in zinc, and 1 in 3 people in this country probably are, if you're deficient in zinc, if you take a hit to your gut or any cell lining, so basically the skin on the outside is also the skin on the inside of your lungs. It's also the skin that lines your intestinal tract. If you're low in zinc, if these linings of cells get disrupted, they cannot repair themselves as quickly as if they had enough zinc. So zinc is critical for maintaining that gut integrity, that cell-to-cell integrity, which is ultimately what keeps us from falling apart. And a little bit of zinc, we don't need to go out of control, but a little bit of zinc can actually help protect against that.
What is that? What do you mean a little bit? Do you know like milligrams wise, or?
Yeah,
It's all about.
Safe dose is 15 to 25 milligrams, which is kind of a standard dose. Some people are suggesting doses way higher than that. I think because other things can get tipped, just taking a standard dose would be very appropriate, and still very helpful.
Are there any foods? Can you get zinc
Yeah,
in
I was
foods?
going to ask about nutrition. Yeah, you can get zinc in foods. What foods have zinc? Broccoli?
You know, off the top of my head, I actually don't remember.
I could do a
Sorry.
quick Google
We'll do a
search.
quick Google search.
Yeah, because I'm a big advocate for using nutrition for
Absolutely.
your vitamins and minerals. Foods with zinc, why not? Just do a Google search. I have a list going in our kitchen that has, oh, well, I was very wrong. Well, we do eat a lot of cashews, but chickpeas, beef, crab, not everyone eats beef, obviously, oatmeal, kidney beans, that's good to know. But the point is, I think anything you're looking for can also come in food. Now, obviously talking about like your source of food, how you get food, whether that food's organic, how it's grown, all of those things it's a different conversation for another time, but play a huge role in, I'm sure, your ability to absorb what a lot of those vitamins and minerals are. But it's nice to have like a little bit of a cheat sheet of what supplements to maybe keep on hand right now in a time where we're all so vulnerable.
You know, the thing
So
with
back to my notes.
so zinc, the cool thing is it's really inexpensive, right? There's
Zinc.
the market.
Glutathione's not. That's
Glutathione could be expensive, but when you look at it as, you know, for a group of 10 people, all they need is one bottle.
Right.
And when you look at it like that, then it becomes much less expensive because the glutathione to me is kind of your rescue remedy, right? It's the thing you use if someone is starting to fall apart. Most people can boost their glutathione levels naturally through food. Again, garlic, onions, the cruciferous vegetables. I say for everyone to be eating that because those foods help heal the gut. They improve gut integrity. They balance the bacteria in the intestinal tract, which further brings down the inflammation. And they give all the sulfur and nutrients for your liver to boost glutathione levels naturally. So on a day-to-day basis, if people started focusing on eating those foods, and you know, I commented this before, like it's funny to me that people are going crazy and buying bullets in, you know, toilet paper, and you don't see onions and garlic being like, you know, like people are like, no onions and garlic.
because no one's talking about this.
No one's
That's
talking
why.
about it.
That's the whole reason for putting this together is because our societal approach to this is fear-based instead of coming from a place of being empowered with knowledge and information.
Well, it's also too what Nick was so brilliantly doing with this, and you guys coming together to do this is to make it easy, so that people can understand. They can literally just get this from a grocery store or a local health food store or Amazon, and it can change your life
Right.
quickly.
Making it easy. That's important.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're not interrupting me. You are contributing. I'm just trying to, I'm just taking notes and reading my cheat sheet for him. Colloidal silver.
Yeah, so in that last handout, I included colloidal silver and essential oils. When you look at colloidal silver, the amount of studies that have been done showing it as a potential antiviral and potential antibacterial are staggering. Like there's so many studies out there that suggest this. Now, there'll be those doctors that say, well, that's so ridiculous. Like why none of those studies are valid.
Met a few.
And you know, my response to them is, then what, even if that's the case, what is the risk?
There's no harm then. Yeah.
There's
So
no-
why fight that? Exactly. Yeah.
And you know, this is the part that's kind of confusing to me because on one hand, we're saying that, you know, potentially like 100,000 people in this country are going to die, which is horrible. But on the other hand, we're like, well, we shouldn't do anything about it because diet doesn't work. You know, colloidal silver doesn't work, zinc doesn't work. So they're poo-hooing all of this stuff at the same time saying, well, all these people are going to end up in the ICUs, our hospitals are going to overflow, we don't have capacity, but don't do anything about it.
Right.
Right.
But the logic
Or
of
don't do anything outside of the norm.
Right.
Don't do anything that we don't have concrete evidence is. Yeah. And that's the difference between, I think, Eastern and Western medicine, or one of the many, many differences. And I think it's time to kind of like merge the bubble. I thought colloidal silver was only an antibacterial, so that's interesting to hear that it has antiviral properties.
actually has, and that's why in that last newsletter I actually posted, you know, and that was like my first 5 articles that I could find. There was
Yeah.
more. it actually has been shown to be a pretty impressive antiviral.
Have you ever heard of anyone having a reaction to it? Because I feel like when I put it in my nose, it gets I feel like a little inflamed. But that also could be because I've been battling this sinus infection.
It's probably because your sinuses are already inflamed to begin with.
They're angry. So when I put something in, they just get more angry. Okay.
Possibly, yeah. For the most part, people don't experience anything. If you got crazy carried away, you can probably end up getting a metallic taste in your mouth. But colloidal silver is so low in its dilution that you would basically have to start chugging like the full bottles that it comes in, like bottles at a time, to actually get overloaded. And
can you breathe it into your lungs?
You can.
Yeah, that's because I'm doing like a full inhalation, and I want to make sure that's safe.
Yeah. So if someone got crazy carried away, so literally they took the full bottle of colloidal silver and started drinking that on a regular basis, you could actually get silver toxicity, and that could do very strange things, from skin discoloration to all kinds of other things. But you would have to be so reckless and so overdoing it that you would basically create that scenario. A little spray of colloidal silver 3 times a day into your nostrils and airways cannot cause any harm. And at least at a theoretical level, if you were exposed to the virus, it could actually neutralize it before it gets into your body to cause any issues. Same thing with essential oils. For me, I've just over time become so obsessed with these oils because the oils have, from what we know, some properties against viruses. We don't know about the coronavirus, but at least according to prior studies with SARS virus, some of them were effective. And
which ones were effective? Thyme, oregano.
Oregano, definitely. Cinnamon, clove. Now, those are potent oils that.
That's actually on my list. I need to get oregano oil.
Yeah, so oregano oil is pretty harsh.
Yes.
Taking it and they digestive issues. So you've got to be careful about that. You don't want to give it to elderly. Chances are they're going to get stomach upset from that. If you're a pretty robust person with good, strong digestive tract, you can probably handle oregano oil, but you need to be cautious with that. But thyme, fir, a tiny bit of peppermint, like basically in a 1%, 3% concentration. So no one should be inhaling these oils in full strength. You should buy it in a blend. Those oils actually could theoretically neutralize the virus, prevent secondary bacteria, and it acts as an active agent because a lot of these oils, including lavender and eucalyptus, have antioxidant properties.
So you're talking about this is still, I called your office to get clarification on this because I want to make sure I'm doing it right. When you're talking about essential oils, you're not just talking about inhaling them. And also, can you explain how? Because even someone like myself, who I feel is relatively knowledgeable about this, I still am confused. Like, am I putting it on my hands? Am I inhaling? Am I rubbing it on my chest? Am I putting it in a diffuser? So definitely that. And then also, are you ingesting these oils? Because the one blend I have from you is so strong.
That we take every day.
And I didn't think it. Yeah, it's the sinus infection magic, but it didn't. It was so strong, I didn't think I could possibly swallow that. I thought it needed to be just inhaled, but I guess you ingest it.
But you can ingest oils. Some of our mixes, like our cough and cold mix, the immune booster, those have essential oils. Honestly, like I can't take it every day because I like, when I get sick, I'm like, my wife.
Really? I'm on 3 times a day. I love it. I feel like I'm flying from it.
It's really amazing. She had a sinus infection for 2 months that I gave her from flying too much. And
you did.
Your oils that we've been taking and just a little bit of fresh squeezed orange juice, it's gone.
Awesome.
Crazy.
They're helpful.
Yeah.
But this just speaks to the power of what nature has to provide us. And again, not to poo-hoo conventional medicine. Like conventional medicine has amazing things. They're looking at these incredible antiviral medications that will save lives. It's not to say vaccines can't be helpful, but why not include everything, especially in this dire situation where we have nothing else?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. What about adaptogens in mushrooms? I haven't heard you mention those, and I make reishi chaga situations every morning, and I feel like they haven't really been included in any of your conversations.
So the immune booster that you have actually has adaptogens in there. So Siberian ginseng eleutherococcus for this virus is in my eyes probably one of the better ones. It's very stimulating. It can actually boost blood pressure for those that are already hypertensive or on the edge. If you're the person that has low blood pressure and you get sick all the time and you kind of run down, this would be like the most magical plant for you. And you can buy it anywhere, Whole Foods.
Can you spell that?
Yeah, Eleuthero. Eleuthero.
Sorry, not to put you on the spot. Yes, Eleuthero. Okay.
But Eleuthero is awesome. You can buy it for like $8 a bottle that'll last you 2 or 3 months, and it actually seems to have some compounds that could be protective against it. Andrographis is another compound or plant that people are looking. The medicinal mushrooms.
Andrographis?
Yeah, Andrographis.
Okay.
And
these are tinctures?
These are capsules.
Capsules.
Yeah, these are capsules that people can buy. You know, Eleuthero is really easily found at Whole Foods. Pretty much any health food store has it, and they have multiple bottles of it. Andrographis is a little bit harder to find, but should be easily found. I think the adaptogens in general are fantastic as a preventative aid. In the face of an illness, it's probably a little too late. I think the medicinal mushrooms are fantastic for balancing the immune system and just increasing one's vitality. And if people are taking that, they should continue. What I try to do over time is really simplify things to kind of the bare bones things that everyone should be talking about. Zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D, now the vitamin A, probiotics.
In prebiotics was a big part of your last paper too. Okay, prebiotics, that's right. I'm remembering all the things I still need to.
Prebiotics was just prepping the gut for the probiotics to come and work their magic.
It's like a fibrous formula that kind of like cleanses that you can properly absorb the bacteria from probiotics, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah. Consider it like a fertilizer. You fertilize your lawn, you fertilize your garden so everything grows better.
Right.
Prebiotics are fertilizer to help the good bacteria in our intestinal tract grow more effectively, more efficiently. And honestly, over time, I found that prebiotics in foods, so pretty much all of the veggies, and garlic, mushrooms, are
bananas
are awesome for feed.
You know, it's funny, if you like really quiet yourself in your body tells you, if you've ever just like sat and thought about what you want to eat, and obviously, of course, like cookies and all the good shit comes to mind, sure, but if you push that away for a second and you go like, what am I really feeling? It's interesting because in the last couple of weeks I have been thinking a lot about, my body's really wanted like bananas or kale or chard, and then I get this list from you of all the things that we need to kind of build immunity, and obviously my immune system is feeling really weak right now. And it's interesting that your body does tell you. You know, that's why kids to me are so fascinating, because what they gravitate towards, again, with the exception, of course, of like making food look really interesting by putting it in like the shapes of dinosaurs and stars and stuff. But if you take that part aside, kids tell you what they want to eat. And I think if we listen to children and we let them kind of guide us before they're 4 and 5 years old and super picky, but you know, like 8 months old, 12 months old, 16 months old, what they pull into their bodies is what their body is telling them they want before we can kind of influence that. And I do think, again, a topic for another time, but something that really fascinates me is, I think if we listen to children and how they want to eat, we would have a more sort of balanced approach to plant-based eating and meat eaters and everything all around, because we're not imposing our feelings and thoughts as adults on what children should be doing. And I think the world would be a little bit more balanced.
Big time. Yes.
Okay, this is definitely something that a lot of people want to talk about, of course. And then I also want to open it up to, I asked on the post if people could give me some questions, and we got a lot of them. And so I know you don't have a lot of time, and I want to really be respectful of your time. But I love your approach to fear and not allowing that to control you. But I also find that to be a really difficult topic to tackle, because we all feel afraid right now. We do. I mean, you also have to kind of embrace fear and embrace that it's a scary, weird time. But what does stress actually do to your immune system? Like, break that down for us.
Yeah, so I mean, stress is probably the #1 way to cripple the immune system. at a hormonal level, so when you get big surges of cortisol and various other stress hormones, that actually debilitates your immune response at a cellular level.
Mm.
Stress over time can also cause a leaky gut. So basically, it causes your intestinal tract to literally fall apart. And there are animal studies. You don't want to know exactly what they did to these poor animals, but to say the least, they stressed these animals out, and then when they look, all of the animals had leaky guts. What we are also finding is that stress also changes the bacteria in the intestinal tract and literally kills off. So if you're stressed out of your mind and you're taking
Wow.
probiotics, you're basically negating that entire effect, because the stress hormones you're releasing into the intestines are actually they're anti-fertilizers. So imagine you've got the fertilizers that help everything grow, and then you've got the anti, which actually kill off and reduce the counts of the beneficial bacteria. Stress actually reduces
Stress is like the pesticide to
the pesticide. Thank you.
to the fertilizer.
Yes.
Wow.
And
That doesn't give me a lot of hope, because we're all living really stressful lives.
But, I think that this is where, if we look at this and say, well, we're in a very stressful time. There's no question about that. And, anyone could potentially get harmed. And chances are we all have family members. Like, I'm still really worried about my parents and mother-in-law.
Yeah.
They're of older age. My mother-in-law used to smoke. So her lungs and airways are more vulnerable. But when you really sit down and think about it and ask yourself, how does fear help us in this situation? It really doesn't, right? And this is one of the things that I, over the last week really thought about before I wrote that last post. There's something to be said about being highly, highly aware, being very careful, being very, very responsible. But does that necessarily mean you have to be fearful?
Right.
And that's the one thing. And it was actually Dr. Elroy in one of his postings that as I was watching him, I was like, he has a great point, and he's brought up the same thing. We don't necessarily have to be fearful to be responsible and careful and aware. And in fact, when you look at it, like Navy SEALs, they're put into the most stressful scenarios, but they're also trained not to mount a stress response. Because the moment they lose their head is when they die, right? Mm-hmm. When you start looking at this and asking, like, does being fearful and stressed out necessarily help us? You come to a point where you're like, no, it doesn't, because
no, but being alert does.
Absolutely.
If you can separate being fearful, like if you think about like a gazelle, right? Like in the woods, like they're alert, and part of living is being alert. Like you also don't last when you're not paying attention and you have your head up and you're looking around. And so I think that's a really good point, learning to separate fear from being knowledgeable, being aware, being proactive. Being proactive is a big one. Yeah. And that's what I love about, that was what really inspired me to connect with you on this, is because you're so proactive and you're sitting there saying, hey, there's already things we can be doing right now, and we should be talking about those. Can I ask you some Instagram questions from people? Do you have time?
Yeah.
Do you have to leave?
Thanks,
okay.
Dr. Catterall.
Just hang up when you're done. There's a lot, so I'm definitely not gonna. Okay, hold on. Yes, I can save the video for later. I hearted them so I could find them. Gut health we talked about, which is great. Vitamins we talked about. Okay, maybe we tackled a lot of these, which is great. Vitamin C and vitamin D. Maybe this is more of a recap than questions. What nutrition and supplements are optimal for a 99-year-old? I'm caring for my mom, and I'd like to make sure she's as strong as possible. My dad has Parkinson's with only one lung. Is there anything I can help build his immune system? Pneumonia is the number one complication. Is there anything else you would add to what we've already said for those two families?
So I think those will be the scenarios where they may actually want to give them the glutathione. So studies have shown that there's a lot of things that change with age, and natural ability to produce glutathione is one of them. So I think for those vulnerable individuals, one, have a conversation with their doctor, ask them about, when would they want to consider antibiotics like azithromycin especially. Azithromycin, in my opinion, seems to be an antibiotic that could be helpful. It seems to have antiviral properties, oddly enough.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm hearing, well, here where we are, everyone is saying what you're saying, right? That azithromycin seems to be really working and having antiviral properties. And then somebody who's a dear friend of ours who I work with, who lives in Ohio, was told by her doctor yesterday that azithromycin would do nothing but give her a yeast infection, and she is diagnosed as having COVID. Sorry, it's pausing when people call. So what do you think about that?
So we don't know exactly. What we do know is, one, there are secondary infections that could come from coronavirus. And azithromycin,
like pneumonia, right? That would be considered a secondary infection, right?
Absolutely. And azithromycin has definitely been shown to be helpful for that. I really wish these people would look at these studies, because the macrolides, which azithromycin is a part of, are anti-inflammatories, which is helpful. They do seem to be useful for antivirals. We don't know against coronavirus. But when you look at it and you say, like, okay, what are the risk factors for azithromycin? Azithromycin is probably one of the safest antibiotics, unless you have a heart condition. So it can actually cause an arrhythmia in those vulnerable people. And that's why everyone should talk to their doctor. But azithromycin is probably one of the darn safest antibiotics around. And if someone, especially if they're vulnerable, you know, like the elderly or the person who has one lung, if they're in that situation, they can talk to their doctor and say, look, if I'm getting to a place where I've got this virus, I've started coughing, the cough is getting worse, you know, people shouldn't be taking this just willy-nilly. You know, if you are totally asymptomatic, I would not suggest you take this antibiotic just because. If you're starting to fall apart, like my cousin was, I actually prescribed her azithromycin, told her to take it, and it seems to be, in that scenario, actually helpful. Same thing with the hydroxychloroquine. You know, it's funny to me because
a lot of controversy around that too. Right?
A lot of controversy, and a lot of people are saying, well, oh my God, it can cause heart arrhythmias, it can do all of this, and all of that is true. If someone is about to end up in the ICU and they're about to die, why are we waiting for them to fall apart? If the person already knows they're having shortness of breath, if their coughing is starting to get out of control, and we know in probably 2 to 3 days' time, they may end up in the ICU. I think in that scenario, the person taking this malaria medication, which has been prescribed in billions of doses now over the last 20 plus years that it's existed, I think for them to take that is a lesser risk than someone end up in the ICU. And these are the conversations I don't know if it's afraid to have or we just don't want to have. And it's like, well, you just wait till you end up in the ICU and then we'll take care of you. You know?
I think everything's just happened so fast, to be honest with you. And there's a lot of information. People don't know who to trust. They don't know if they should trust the news. They don't know who has an agenda and what that agenda is. And so, you know,
really
I think it's happened.
Time.
It's a confusing time.
It is.
And we are a fear-based culture. It's true. Or
animal.
Or animal world.
Yeah. But this is where I think people having a preventative discussion with their physician, and you know what I try to do in this last email in particular, this last newsletter, is try to dig up as many studies as I can, include that, so that people can take that doctor and then go to their doctor and say, look, this is the information, here's what do you think? And have a game plan in place. So heavens forbid, when people get this illness, they have a way to actually go on the offensive, to actually do something to get ahead of this so they don't end up in the ICU. And, you know, part of what I'm very fortunate for is I'm surrounded by some very, very smart adult doctors that practice similar to how I do. And, you know, they're the ones that I pick their brains. And I was like, okay, what are you guys doing? Are your patients ending up in the ICUs? And all of them are like, for the most part, we have kept pretty much all of our patients, some of whom were very sick, out of the hospital, which says a lot.
Wow.
But that means that we need to have a game.
The hospital appreciates you too, by the way, because they're overflowing with,
they
need help and support, and they need doctors like you that are helping keep people out of the hospital for them as well.
Wow.
And I'm so grateful for you to be sharing and having this discussion and to be sharing this, because if we start spreading this concept out there of how do we prevent people from ending up in the hospital, What are simple, easy, safe steps? Some of them less expensive than others, but what are simple, easy things that people can do that may decrease their chance by 10%, 50%? We don't know. But if we can take these steps and use these tools, why not?
You said, did you say you think 80% of the population is going to have this? Is that what you said?
I mean, what I heard was that at some point in the next 6 months to a year, because it's going to take that much time for a vaccine to come out, at least 50 to 60% of the population is going to have this. And, you know, this is the part that has had me kind of start really becoming proactive because, you know, sheltering in place, doing social distancing, all of those things are great, but people are going to get this. People, you know, we're just slowing the process down, but to some extent, this is inevitable. And this is why we need to become more proactive. We need to become more preventative in terms of making sure that when people get it, because it's almost more a conversation of when than if. When people get it, do they have the tools to minimize their risk of falling apart?
Yeah. Supplements and herbs for sleeping. Just a lot of people ask because they're so freaked out and stressed out about this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
anxiety herbs.
Super helpful. There are studies.
What is it? Sorry, you broke up.
Melatonin.
I read something about melatonin being useful with COVID. Is that?
So we don't know. We think that melatonin can actually change some of the cellular pathways that COVID ultimately uses to cause a mess. The problem with melatonin is if you start taking it every day long term for, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks, you could actually start distorting the production of other hormones and in the long term start causing other issues as an unintended consequence.
Right.
Taking melatonin a few milligrams, you know, a few times a week when you're having a hard time falling asleep, I think is absolutely fine. Even taking it every night for 2 or 3 weeks, totally fine. The reason why I haven't pushed it too much is I was afraid that people would start taking it daily for 2 months and then suddenly start developing other issues, which would put them in harm's way. And that's the only reservation I have. But melatonin could be a great sleep aid. Lemon balm, melissa, which is lavender, chamomile, any of these could be helpful. And these are things that could be easily found. But I think the other part of this for us to go back to is if someone is so stressed out that they can't fall asleep, I think it's also worth them stepping back and say, what is the reason why I'm so stressed out? And how do I get rid of this fear, this stress that is ultimately harming me, harming my family? Because a lot of us have little kids, right? And they look at us. And if we're a paranoid wreck, you know, for this boogeyman that may harm us, we're imprinting that onto them.
Well, I think it's definitely stress from this virus, but also the ripple effect of this virus, right? I mean, so many people have lost jobs, homes,
the economic fallout,
future. So I think it's
Yes,
it's definitely a larger conversation, but I think approaching it with tools, herbs, tools, a gentle approach is a good way. Meditation, things like that.
Did you guys get a chance to talk about immune boosting and function in babies and toddlers? So
yeah, that's another question. Under 1, people are asking. I have a child under 1. What's safe for my child? And what are your thoughts on children with this in general?
So from everything that I've seen, children actually process this virus very, very easily.
Why do you think that is?
We don't entirely know. We think that part of it may have to do with these receptors that they have on their cells, which this virus uses to infect people. That's one of the most popular ideas behind this. That children actually have different receptors to the coronavirus than adults do. So they literally just don't get infected the same way as adults do. Kids have more glutathione levels for the most part than adults do. They have different melatonin levels. Their systems are literally different than ours are as adults. And part of why, honestly, I've actually kept redirecting our families to say, don't worry about your kids, make sure they're eating healthfully. And I think that right now, that's probably the most important thing we could do. Give them a little bit of vitamin D, give them a multivitamin with some zinc, give them a tiny bit of vitamin C if you want. But most probiotics are great. I think all of those are super, super helpful. But at the end of the day, I would rather have families shift their attention from, my God, is my kid going to get really sick, to how do I take care of grandma? How do I take care of my sick neighbor? You know, I think to me, that is actually a much more important and useful way for us to channel our energy. I'm not worried about my own daughter and son, and we've got a 3-month-old at home. I'm not that worried about most of the kids in the practice. We have a handful that have severe asthma, and I've told those families, like, you need to go into isolation. Like, I do not want to see what happened if your son or daughter ended up getting this virus. Some of these kids I've actually put on glutathione, so they're taking it preventatively. But again, this is in our entire practice, there's 4 kids that I can count that I've said that kind of a regimen to. If you know, knock wood, families have healthy kids, chances are they don't need to be that worried.
Yeah. Where's the baby monitor?
Right here.
It's right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to go get her up.
I'm not used
Hey,
to
I can't. Well, will you finish this with him?
There you are.
I
She
am.
doesn't wake up till 4:30.
I'm going to make sure there's food and everything for Mom.
Oh, that's sweet.
Listen, keep going, please. I have to handle a few things, but thank you for this. And I'm going to make sure that, like, this is so helpful for everyone, because there's so many questions, and not just coming from us, but from so many people. So thanks for taking the time. This is the difference of incredible doctors that are going to change the world and doctors that just sort of do, you know, the run of the mill. Thank you, Dr. K.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'll see you. I'll probably talk to you in the next, like, couple of hours.
Sounds good.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, we went through a lot of these, and I really want to be conscious of your time, so thank you. I had a doctor who, actually, this is interesting. Free radicals, pre-existing lung health, sedentary lifestyle versus runners or swimmers, for instance. Do you think that being active during this time is really important? Do you think it makes the lungs more vulnerable if we're stressing them with exercise? There's someone who's really concerned about.
So is running making someone more vulnerable to the illness?
Like, do you think that being active right now is important to kind of keep the body in a healthy state? Or do you think that we should be really gentle with our bodies and our lungs and things like that right now?
Exercise can boost antioxidant levels. So I think with the constraints that we have, you know, I'm sure there are some people that are in a scenario where they don't have the ability to really exercise. And, you know, like for me, I in the mornings I get up and I do whatever exercises I can within the home. I think to whatever extent someone is able to, they should continue to do whatever they can to keep themselves as healthy as possible. Because I think at the end of the day, that is the one thing that could really, really help.
And do you think it's just asthmatic people or people with autoimmune issues as well that we have to be conscious of?
I think people with autoimmune conditions, especially those that are on medications, for sure.
Okay.
And, you know, honestly, I'm really worried about a large percentage of our population, because we have a lot of people that are on biologic medications, immune suppressants, and we don't know how they'll be able to handle this virus. We have people, it turns out that anti-blood pressure medications actually change the receptors that the virus uses to enter the body. And a lot of people with high blood pressure are getting in trouble. So we have a lot of people that have chronic disease, and anyone really that has any kind of significant chronic disease outside of asthma or anything affecting the lungs should also be very, very careful.
What about elderberry? I know you've probably been asked a lot about elderberry in the last couple of weeks, but will you talk about that for a second? We're a big elderberry household, so if there's something I should know.
So elderberry as a preventative agent is amazing. So what happened is someone got a hold of a study that suggested that elderberry boosted cytokine levels. And then they said, well, if it increases cytokine levels, it could increase your risk of having this awful cytokine storm, which ultimately is what kills people. So therefore, no one should be taking elderberry. That is
I think it was blown out of proportion.
Way out of proportion.
Okay.
There are studies that suggest that elderberry acts as an antioxidant. And this one brilliant doctor actually broke down all of the studies that were referenced in terms of why elderberry is an issue. And it turns out that elderberry causes the cytokines to go up just a smidge, like 3% above baseline, which theoretically is no way that it can harm. So what I've suggested to our families, which is what a lot of people are saying, is use elderberry as a preventative agent, which is really what it should be for. And if you're getting sick, if you're starting to feel like you're about to fall apart, that's when you should shift yourself and your focus to using glutathione, to using the essential oils, using vitamin C, other things to really shore up your system. Because chances
What about pregnant women? Waiting for Wholistic Kids. We did it. I don't know what happened.
off.
I think they told us we were talking for too long. I think someone caught wind of this, disconnected us. Pregnant women, I've been reading a little bit about pregnant women not being affected as severely, but I'm hesitant to say that, of course. I'm just asking the question.
So that I don't know.
Okay.
So I've told our pregnant moms to be very careful.
Okay.
I know that if they were to get infected, fortunately, the baby is left totally unaffected from what we know, so it doesn't transfer to the baby, which is great. I honestly don't know. So I can't answer that. I can say that when it comes to pregnancy, I tell the moms to be extra cautious.
Yeah.
So I actually reached out to this brilliant naturopathic doctor who's also a midwife, and all she does is pregnancy. And for instance, she suggested that glutathione when you're pregnant is not a good idea because theoretically it could detox and release toxins. But N-acetylcysteine, which I don't think we talked about, NAC, NAC, is actually a great way to boost glutathione levels without causing.
What is that? Is
So,
that like a component of?
Yeah, it's basically the precursor, building block to glutathione. And people that take NAC end up boosting glutathione levels naturally. And the cool thing is NAC is also way less expensive. So for anyone that's on a budget, you can buy a bottle of NAC for like $10 from most health food stores. Some pharmacies even sell it.
NAC?
NAC.
Do you have any other budget-friendly tips on supplementation?
Yeah, minus glutathione, I've been really conscious of what I've been recommending. So vitamin C you can buy for next to nothing.
Sure.
Vitamin A you can buy for next to nothing. Vitamin
Essential oils, especially food grade, can be really expensive though.
They can be. I was really happy that we were able to find this ImmuBoost, which is the most recent one that we've recommended.
That's what I have for me that changed my life.
And it.
By the way, the work you've done goes so far beyond that, so it's kind of funny that that's the only thing that I'm mentioning because you've actually changed our life in so many ways. But that's just a very recent light example.
This product, we're selling it on our website. I think you can find it on Amazon as well. So if anyone's interested, if they go to holistickids.com and then there's a products tab.
You're selling it on Amazon? Like it's your product?
The company.
Oh, you just buy that product?
Yeah, this one is actually a formulation of our pharmacy that we buy it from.
Oh,
so
great.
It's their formulation, and I looked at it. I'm like,
I love a non-plug.
Yeah, so they can find it in other places. We just happen to be one of the places that sell it, and it's dirt cheap. I think it's like $11 or $12 a bottle, and one bottle would last a whole family a month.
Yeah.
So things don't always have to be expensive to work.
Yeah.
That's, I think, one of the things that we can look at. Glutathione is expensive. NAC is dirt cheap, and it works. it works. Vitamin C ultimately boosts glutathione levels, and that works.
What do you think about, it's a big conversation, so just touch on it if it's too much, but what do you think about 5G and our immune systems?
You know, there are a lot of people that are asking the question, does 5G ultimately disrupt cellular membranes? Does it disrupt cell-to-cell communication? What kind of effect does it have? I honestly don't know. I don't know if we have enough information and data on it to in any kind of definitive way say what it's doing. I've read and heard, you know, people saying the reason why coronavirus, this virus in particular, is spreading is because of 5G. I don't know if I buy into that entirely. I don't like 5G. I wish that it's a technology they didn't come up with for a host of reasons. And while, you know, being able to stream whatever you want, wherever you want is so cool in theory, I think we haven't totally thought this through. I don't know if it's causing the irreparable harm that people are also attributing to it.
Sorry, just doing something so I could see you better. Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a larger conversation for a different time, and I do appreciate your caution when approaching something that you don't feel you can speak about at this time, but I also think it's something that's definitely worth researching on everyone's own accord then, because you know, part of what I love about your approach to medicine is you're taking things that have been whether or not they're proven in the world of medicine, who knows, but they've certainly proven themselves just by virtue of the fact that they've been used forever, like essential oils for combating, you know, viruses and things like that. And definitely cautious, at least on a personal level, I am when it comes to incorporating new forms of technology and things that we've never experienced before. Okay, hairballs, pulling hairballs, oh my God. But things that we've never experienced before as human beings, and claiming that they're safe before we've had any time to kind of test or prove that theory. And I do know that I definitely feel a connection between holding my phone all day long, or my iPad or my computer, and my own personal health and well-being. So it might be a conversation for another time, but it's an interesting time as we all sit here and try to talk about immune function and steering away from immune suppressants, and then holding these devices all day long that do have the ability to do that, because we're all home and, you know, everyone's on their phones 22 and a half hours a day now.
Yeah. And, you know, simple things that could be done, like, for instance, the router that we have, the wireless router in our house, you know, come 11 o'clock, it shuts itself off. And, like, we have no wireless internet in the home. So
wow. You turn off your Wi-Fi at night?
Yeah, because, you know, we hopefully are all asleep, you know, minus my sometimes has to wake up to take care of our little one. But, you know, I've personally found myself to be sleeping better since I've done this. So I think simple things people can do, you know, that
get this thing away. Yeah, that's a good point. Turning off your Wi-Fi at night.
Yeah.
I definitely don't sleep with any technology in the room, but it's true. It's just beaming through us all the time. And it's something that we all rely on, so it's definitely not something we shut out of our lives. Of course, it's a part of moving forward and functioning in society, but it's, I don't know, something to think about and consider. Yeah. Face masks, protection, any thoughts on that? That's been such a weird topic. And then the overuse of hand sanitizer. I think consumption in general is something we should all be talking about right now, personally. But yeah, I think we kind of covered a lot of these. Probiotics, prebiotics. Maybe we could do a little recap. I had an interesting message from a doctor, which of course I don't ever want to put anybody on blast, so I'm not going to mention who or what or anything, but it was an interesting comment that reads, if a real doctor ever uses the phrase immune boosting oils in a non-ironic manner, they should really lose their license. And I thought that was just, you know, it's an interesting kind of segue into the importance, I think, in a time. My response to him was that in these uncertain times. I think it's time for us to maybe adopt a broader approach and a more, mindful approach that's inclusive of things that might be slightly unconventional. So that's the conversation we're having. Although ironically, when I say that out loud, I'm like, the use of antibiotics and conventional Western medicine is the typical, that is the route, I guess, but so is essential oils and things that have been used for thousands of years. So
my response to this doctor is, if they're truly being unbiased and not just shooting from the hip, they're actually welcome to go on our website. So on our store.wholistickids.com, we have a Learn tab, and under that Learn tab, if they go under essential oils, I created a database of about 60 studies. These are scientific PubMed listed studies that talk about the different antimicrobial properties and immune modulating properties of the essential oils. So if anyone is curious, and if this doctor is actually watching, so if they just wanted to try to shoot us down for the sake of shooting us down, whatever their prerogative is, so be it. If someone is actually interested in learning that, or they go on PubMed and just type in lavender antimicrobial, eucalyptus antimicrobial, there are so many studies that are out there that it's almost mind-boggling in terms of what these oils do if someone is willing to take the time to learn about them. And that's the sad thing. A lot of physicians really don't care to learn about things. It's just like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you even say that? And automatically dismiss it. And we're left, I think that this really brings us to, why are we in the situation that we are? Yeah. Because we have a medical system that is so stuck on doing things one way. And they're so stuck on doing things one way that they would rather continue doing it the way that they know, which right now there is no path, and allow people to end up in the hospital or end up in the ICU and just accept that people are going to die, rather than saying, well, we have no tools to bring to the table, so let's look outside of the tools we have for other tools that may be unconventional but may decrease the risk. And I think this really reflects, I'm actually glad that doctor texted you, and I'm appreciative that you shared it, because I think this is part of why we're stuck where we are. We're stuck where we are because we have a community that is so religiously believing in one way of doing things that they can't imagine the possibility of something else. And, in many ways, medicine has become a religion. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with an ultra-Orthodox fill in the blank, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, or Christian, but if you encounter that kind of a person where they're so this is how things have to be, this religion is the best religion, there's no other religion other than my religion. In many ways, medical doctors, the ones that make those comments, are exactly the same way. It's like, this is the right path. This is the only way we do things. Nothing other than this is acceptable or proven, except when you look in how we practice medicine, there are a lot of things that we do that are not proven. Like when people are put on acid blockers for 6 months, there's no data or studies to suggest that that is reasonable. In certain scenarios where steroids are prescribed, like we touched on earlier, there's no data to suggest that that's helpful, but that's okay. But when we have these other discussions, because they're unproven, suddenly it's not okay. And that's, to me, really sad, because people are dying. And I think
it's fear-based, that's all. It's fear-based. I mean, to me, anytime we have that kind of snap judgment or response to anything, even in myself, it's because there's something that's coming up that's rooted in fear. Even if it's fear of learning something new, or fear of having fought against something for so long, and then that thing is proven to have some kind of weight or credibility or whatever it is. Fear comes in many forms, and I think that those reactions are fear-based. The end of my response to that was just my 2 cents, coming from a family with a wonderful doctor, that the best doctors approach everything with an open mind, because being rigid accomplishes less than being open to learning more, especially in uncertain times. And then I said, I'm looking forward to hearing from you and sharing your wisdom with the rest of this page, because I also think there's something to be learned from people who have such conviction too. Like, instead of shutting off that person, we should be open to what that person has to say as well. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot, and I'm so grateful for your time. And recap would be, if everyone has their pen and paper out, essential oils that have been really wonderful: thyme, oregano, lavender. Add to those. What else?
So fir, if they can get it,
Fir.
tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of peppermint.
Okay.
So it has to be less than 2 to 3% of the total concentration.
You
Otherwise,
know what would be great actually? Can I text you after this and I can just ask you for a tiny little recap of just dosage for things, and I'm going to put it into my stories for everyone? Okay, that would be great. Yeah. And then glutathione, supplements glutathione, vitamin C, zinc. I'm just testing myself to see if I was a good student. Zinc, vitamin D in slightly higher doses, vitamin A. What did I miss?
the N-acetylcysteine, NAC.
NAC, right? If you glutathione or NAC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are wonderful. And then using nutrition to boost immune system. So doing a quick Google search, like if any of these supplements are out of reach or not in the budget, just Googling what foods carry some of these vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that we need for gut health. Oh yeah, gut health was a big one. Inflammatory response in the gut.
Yeah, and
Probiotics, prebiotics.
yeah, all of those are healthy. And for people that are really curious, Terry Walls, so WAHLS, she's this over-the-top genius doctor that has created, in my eyes, probably the most perfect anti-inflammatory diet on the face of the planet.
You say Terry or Tracy?
Terry. Terry Walsh, MD. So she learned how to reverse her own MS, and she's now literally launching massive trials, with hundreds, if not thousands, of patients, looking at how her diet really reduces various kinds of autoimmune conditions. So she has a free nutritional guide that you can download when you go to her page and register. So if you just type in diet, you can get this cool little handout. And I'm happy. I think I have it somewhere. I can just share it with you for you to share.
Oh, that'd be great.
But it's really a large, clean, vegetable-based diet with some amount of protein and a small amount of carbs.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to download that. Or if you send it to me, I'll share it. But I'm going to go to her website. Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So very much. And I'll dive into our story together at some point.
Sounds good.
I promise. But in the meantime, I know that you've really... you've helped a lot of people, obviously, so far in your career with medicine, but you're also continuing to help a lot of people on a global level right now, and I really appreciate you taking the time to use this channel to reach a few more people.
Oh, you're most welcome, and I'm grateful for you giving me the opportunity to share. And really, all of this is about us helping our community.
Yeah.
If communities help one another, if communities come together, if we can all watch out for each other, honestly, I think we can turn the tide. I think we can keep more people from landing in the hospital. And if we can do that, I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, extending our reach even further.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Talk soon. And bye, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening. And at one point, all of the comments froze, which was kind of nice, actually, because I could just see your face without all the little squiggles. But I'm grateful for all of your input, and thank you for joining.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.